Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Unity of Charlotte, this beautiful, what is this, October morning. And welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're here in the sanctuary, if you are at home or on the road watching this on Zoom, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, you are welcome here. My name is Reverend Jim Ertz, and I am co-minister here along with Reverend Lisa Herklotz. And let's go ahead and read together our mission statement. So, together, Unity of Charlotte is the place where we nurture a deep and mature experience of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve. If you are here for the first time, we would love a chance just to say hello, just to give you a warm welcome. Is there anyone here that's here for the first time? Just gently raise your hand. Welcome, welcome. Let's welcome this newcomer. Stick with us. After the service, we have fellowship down the hall in Cafe Unity, newly renamed Cafe Unity. And, today is potluck. So there's going to be food if you want to hang out with us and have some food. That will be a treat to get to talk to you there. Know as well that we have different ways of knowing what's going on and checking in with each other. We have that website. MailChimp is our newsletter. Facebook, of course. YouTube, and the little pin over there is for the bulletin board, which is down the hall. That has all of the details that we can't fit on our slides right there. So check that out in order to know what's going on. I invite you to settle into your seats, to take that breath, to move from your head down into your heart as we feel that gratitude of being here together, sharing this space, knowing the truth that we study each and every day. We are so grateful. As we honor that divinity that is in us, that moves through us and as us, that divinity that we are so appreciative of, that knowledge. And with that we say, amen. Please join me in our unity prayer of oneness, so we'll say this out loud again. There is one presence and one power in my life and universe, God the good, omnipotence. And we claim and affirm this presence in our lives as love. If you don't know, that unity prayer of oneness is our first basic unity principle as well. So, at this point, if you know or know of someone or have a situation that is speaking to your heart that is in need of prayer, now is the time where we hold that prayer collectively in this space. We will hold that in prayer, but use this time to say those names and those situations out loud at this time. Hannah, Kurt, Dory, Carson, Western North Carolina, we see Spirit moving through these situations, through these names, with its best outcome. And we say amen. Know also that we have a prayer team that works throughout the week in supporting each one of us. Out in the hallway, out a little bit to the right-hand side there is our prayer box. You can fill out a prayer form. It is confidential. It goes to the prayer team confidentially, and they will hold you in prayer for 2 weeks before we wrap that up and we ship that to the village at Silent Unity, and they pray over that person or situation as well for the next 30 days. So we have that prayer box that works with us as well. Know that Silent Unity accepts phone calls. They have an app that you can just type it in if you want. If you're out and about, you can use that app, and you will be held in prayer. if you want to actually talk to somebody, you can call them on the phone during work hours, and they will do that. There is always somebody holding prayer for all those names that were submitted 24 hours a day at this point. So silent unity is something that is very, very important to us. At this point, we're going to move into our daily word. I'm going to invite Chris to come up as we do our daily word for Sunday. You're welcome.
Good morning, Unity of Charlotte.
Let's get that for you. There you go. You're welcome.
Good morning, Unity of Charlotte and audience. Today's daily word, October 6th, joy.
A little bit closer, Chris. There you go.
I rejoice in life's simple pleasures. Life's biggest moments, weddings, birthdays, graduations, celebrations of all kinds are cause for joy. But joy is found in life's simpler moments, the day-to-day happenings that comprise daily living. Joy is in the sunrise, in the morning prayer, in familiar faces I love and look forward to seeing, in the satisfaction I get from my work. It is my favorite things, and in the sweet surprise that comes from trying something new and different. Joy is the comfort I find in my favorite spiritual practices and in finding God anew as I deepen my spiritual insights. However, in manifesting, joy is a part of me, a way to feel the peace and the power of God in my heart and deep in my soul. And they ate and drank before the Lord on that day with great joy. Chronicles 29:22. Good morning.
Jen Farron, I just discovered her. She's got some beautiful music out there. And set the perfect tone for us to continue to explore the idea of forgiveness, the act of forgiveness, and what forgiveness really offers us. Because it's not always an easy thing to do, and I think we forget what gifts it brings. So that's going to be our focus today. And I want to start by sharing a story I read in one of the Unity publications. It was written by Reverend Richard Mirage, and he spoke of a time in his early 20s, I believe. He was in the car with a friend who was driving. His girlfriend was in the back seat, and his friend fell asleep. And they had a terrible car accident. And his friend and girlfriend walked away from it, but he ended up being paralyzed from the waist down. So he shared the process he went through of having this experience and feeling so much anger and desire for revenge, a desire to make this friend pay for what he did to him. And that was a burden he was carrying on top of the burden of already having to deal with a major altering life experience, right? And he talks about how his days were consumed with these thoughts and these ideas. But he had a mom who went to Unity. And he said his mother continued to approach him and support him and help him through this process, always with this open heart and totally forgiving nature. And she just stayed there with him through all his angst and all his fear and all of his anger. Until one day, she left the house and he found a daily word on the table, and he picked it up and he started reading it. And suddenly the idea came to him, brother, what are you doing to yourself? He literally understood, what am I doing to myself? And it was like a miraculous moment where his whole thought process shifted and something opened up in him and he lightened up. And it wasn't a single thing, it was a whole process after that, but now he was processing it through a completely different perspective. And he had his mother there to guide him and talk to him and be the example of what forgiveness looks like in action. There was a moment when he was in the car. By the way, he now can drive. He can walk with the support of canes. He is a Unity ordained minister. I can't remember which church is it at, and lives a very full life. But one day he said he was in his car, and that friend, this was years later, that friend was going across the crosswalk right in front of the car. And the memory of the vengeful stories he had told himself showed up for a moment. But he said then they just left. And his friend saw him and he waved and hurried on, and he said that was it. That's when he knew he had forgiven and let go. Now, we all have our stories. They don't have to be this dramatic or traumatic. We all have things we hold on to. And we know what those are because if you pause and go into your own mind, we'll find out what story you keep playing over and over in your head. That, for me, is my immediate indicator of an unforgiven moment. Unless, I guess, it's bringing me great joy. But usually we don't ruminate on those moments that bring us great joy. We experience them fully and live in the joy of it. It's not something we ruminate on. When we're ruminating on something, it's usually because we're still hanging on to an unforgiven thought about it. So I want you to think about how it feels when you're in that moment. I know when I'm in that moment how I feel. It is not how I want to be. I don't want to stay. It feels heavy. It feels limited. It feels dark. And the more I ruminate in that, the darker it gets. And at some point, I just want to find the door out. And that's why I titled this, Forgiveness is the Open Door. And we're going to be looking at, forgiveness is the open door. Came from the idea that in A Course in Miracles, it says this. It says, and listen, this is really important. All blocks to the remembrance of God are forms of unforgiveness and nothing more. Everything that blocks us from the awareness of our divine nature, from the divine flow of love, from the healing sense of spirit is unforgiveness. It's not missing, and I think that's important to remember. That love, that presence, that joy, it isn't missing. We just have shut the door to the awareness of it. Rosemary Fillmore Ray, who is a granddaughter of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, wrote that hatred, anger, and resentment block the awareness of the flow of God's healing love. Exactly the same thing, really. We block the power and joy and love and flow of God when we hold on to things. And I mention this because this is why forgiveness is so important. Forgiveness was at the very core of everything Jesus taught. Forgive, let go, let God into your life. And it doesn't have to do with the other person. It's all happening right in here. Reverend Jim spoke to that so beautifully last week when he talked about Colin Tipping's process for forgiveness, which actually it's an amazing and very powerful process. So I hope you all come to the workshop. And if you can't, get the book and just look at the worksheet and step through it, because it allows you the opportunity to actually process the emotions of that unforgiven thought. And when we allow, and that's a part of forgiving ourselves, because somewhere in every unforgiveness at someone else, there's an unforgiveness within ourselves. Maybe for just simply not being able to forgive. But we get to let it all go. One of my favorite forgiveness quotes was when Peter asked Jesus, this is in Matthew 18, 21 through 22. And I don't know, Reverend Jim may have actually used this quote, but I'm going to use it again because it's so good. He said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Like, how many times does he do something and I have to forgive him? And Jesus said, I do not say to you, he said as many as 7 times. Jesus said, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. Which we know means every time your brother does something, be forgiving. Now, what I find interesting as I'm really feeling this scripture out is that, and Father Richard Rohr, we're going to look at him in a minute, and he expresses this too. He's not talking about, forgiveness isn't a one-off act. Forgiveness, when we begin to practice it, as releasing our judgments and opening that door to the flow of God's love, of Spirit's healing energy, of that joy and presence. Forgiveness becomes how we respond to life. Not just one act. We tend to think, oh, there's this thing happened and I need to forgive it. But then there's all these other little things that we don't think about so much. Forgiveness becomes the practice we live by because that's what keeps that door open to allow God in and to be expressed through us. And that's actually who and what we are and why we're here. Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan friar. How many of you know Richard Rohr? There's quite a few. If you haven't ever read him, it's fun to go look him up. He does a daily blog. He sounds so much like Unity for a Catholic priest. And what he teaches is very powerful. He says it very beautifully, and he talks about forgiveness. And he said one of the amazing things about Jesus, it was his capacity to find God in the disorder and imperfection. Jesus had the capacity to find God in disorder and imperfection because that's where we forget God is present. That's where we block the awareness of God. And when we open that door through forgiveness, we start to see everything is God. God is indeed everywhere present. He says, Jesus taught us to do the same thing through the act of forgiving, or we would never find contentment in this world. This is our way to find peace, the peace that passeth understanding. He goes on to say, and I have a slide on this. He says, forgiveness reveals 3 goodnesses simultaneously. And I love this idea, so I'm going to share it with you. When we forgive, first, we choose the goodness of the other over their faults. We choose to look beyond what we believe in our own perception is their errors to see the good in them. That is a very powerful act. And he says this is the way we start to find the essence in each one of us. Now, I thought about this, and I'm thinking, when you start to look at a person that's done something to you, you start to look past the immediate words or behavior. And as I look past the immediate words and behavior, and I look a little deeper, I might initially find somebody who's actually in fear, somebody who is actually hurting, somebody who is acting out from a place of unsettledness and confusion. And then, looking past that, I'm going to find their essence. And their essence is always of God. Now, this is important because the next thing it does, when we do this, next thing, the second goodness it brings is we experience God's goodness flowing through us. When I have paused and stopped that story for a moment and just looked at that person, looked past the words or the behaviors I thought were hurting me, and see the goodness in them, that's the beginning of the open door in myself. That's the shift in my perception to allowing the flow of God back in. And when we do this, to be open to another is to be open to ourselves, and we open ourselves up to grace, to love, and to wholeness again. The third thing is, he then says we experience our own capacity for goodness. Now, it's about us. Because what have we done? Now we are looking past our own errors and misspoken words or misbehaviors. We're looking past our own mistakes. And we might initially find a sense of fear, a sense of confusion, and a sense of disconnection in ourselves. Oh, not so different from the person I've just been judging. But neither is my essence, because my very essence is also of God. And when I hit that place in my consciousness, that door flies open. And the experience, let's go back to that story. Richard Mirage, in that moment when he realized he was but doing this to himself, the pain and the burden that he was carrying of that anger. And when he had a moment of letting that go, grace flowed in. And you feel a sense of lightness and love again. That's how powerful forgiveness is. That's how powerful forgiveness is. It's not always easy to do, though, is it? It's not so easy to do sometimes. Sometimes things are easier to let go of. And it's a good practice to start with little things. But there are some big things in our lives sometimes that seem impossible to be able to find a place to accept. Terrible, horrible, devastating things appear to happen in this world. And we can look at that and go, how? How do I forgive that? Rosemary Ray said this. She said, she says, at times to make the intolerable tolerable seems beyond our human reach. And if we were only human, this might be true. But we are not only human. That is but one part of ourselves. We are also divine. And what that means is we don't have to count on our human frailty to find the strength and the ability to forgive. We have our own divine nature and the heart of God living within us that will do it for us if we open up to it and ask and claim it and desire it. At the moment we choose the path of forgiveness, the divine love that is the heart of us begins to work this miraculous power. And it does seem like a miracle, because in one moment, we are in these strong emotions of fear and anger and retribution and hatred. And those emotions get fed within us, right? Those emotions get very juicy emotions. And sometimes, we call people drama queens. They get addicted to that sense of emotion. So somewhere first, you have to not want to do that. You have to know there's a better way, a higher way being paved through forgiveness that will offer you a much more satisfying experience than living in these energies of hatred. Reverend Mirage found this in finding that unity book and beginning to practice these principles and having this moment of that burden lifted off of him and feeling the joy and the lightness. Can you imagine what a relief? What a relief. How many of you have had that? I'm sure there are people in here who have had that experience where you've been hanging on to some grievance, some anger, some frustration, and it got lifted. Maybe through the work you're doing, or maybe just your prayer for help. Sometimes all I can do is get on my knees and go, help. So I want to share a quick story about when I worked at Apple Computer. I was a project manager for training development on their systems, and I worked with vendors who actually did the curriculum writing. So I was working with this vendor, and he kept missing deadlines. And I kept getting frustrated, and the relationship started to get very sticky and not fun. And I was at the moment feeling very righteous about demanding that he meet these timelines. So I was probably not as skilled and mature at handling it as I can now see that I might have been. So I dug my heels in, he dug his heels in, and we just had a very unhappy relationship. And it finally came to a point where I was so frustrated, and I was in a Course in Miracles group, and of course all I'm reading about is forgiveness, right? I'm in this Course in Miracles group, and I'm going, oh man, and my whole job was so unhappy. I just didn't like going in anymore. It was frustrating to me, so I was finally doing one of the lessons, and I sat down and I was doing a meditation, and I had this experience, kind of a vision, but it was an absolute experience of seeing the two of us at work going at it with our arguments. And then when we were done, I realized we were on a stage, and we both stepped off the stage. All the angst went away, and we just looked at each other, wow, good job, that was really fun. Let's go get a beer. And it sounds funny, but the experience was absolutely real to me. When we stepped off that stage and let that story go, when I let that story go, and I just was with him for who he was, and I let myself be who I was, there was no more angst at all. It's like, why was I holding on to that so much? That was a miraculous moment. That's kind of not one of those big dramatic ones, but the impetus of what that was showing me was very important. When I'm in that story, I'm on my own stage, telling myself a story. When I step off that stage, that's the willingness to open that door and see a great vision. See who we are in reality and not be too caught in all the little dramas we play out in this life. Because we're divine beings. And nothing we do is unforgivable. Nothing. Matter of fact, it has all already been forgiven. We're just catching up. We're just catching up. I'm the only one holding on to the grievance and not experiencing the release of it. Once I let go of that, once I step off the stage, I recognize, oh, it was already healed. Lowell Fillmore has a very wonderful quote. That's on the next slide. Forgiveness releases the power of God in you. That's what forgiveness does. It releases the power of God in me. Let's all say that together, if you would. And let's say forgiveness it releases it in me. Ready? Forgiveness releases the power of God in me. One more time, please. Forgiveness releases the power of God in me. Wow. This is no small thing. Whether it's a forgiveness of a small infraction or the forgiveness of some very dramatic or traumatic experience, you and I can free ourselves without changing anything about the circumstance or what's happening around us. We change. And when we do, then the circumstances will begin to shift around us. Not based on our demand of how they're supposed to be, but simply by allowing the presence of God flowing through us, allowing ourselves to express our own divinity, and allowing that to flow out into the world. Every moment of forgiveness is a miracle because we have freed ourselves from the weight and the burden of error thought. It is the open door through which love, light, power, and presence of Spirit pour into our consciousness, our heart and our mind and our life are renewed. We could probably sum up our whole spiritual practice in that. If we had one thing to practice, let it be this. And remember to be forgiving about yourself if you're not forgiving immediately. It's funny how we compound it, right? God, I should be able to forgive this. Why am I not letting it go? I'm so bad at this spiritual stuff. It's not working. I must be doing something wrong. Stop it. Just stop it. When you hear yourself doing it, when I hear myself doing it, it's like, oh, okay. Do I want to keep heaping on the burdens on the thing I'm already burdening myself about? I've got enough. Let it go. There's a divine timing, and I trust that. If I'm not ready to forgive yet, if it's taking some work, the song said, some transgressions take some time to heal. Let that time be. Spirit is working in you perfectly in each and every situation. If it takes time, so be it. Time doesn't matter. You just keep going back to that place, to that open door, and letting God in. And then just feel gratitude. I'm doing the best I can in this moment. Sometimes we say to ourselves, I don't know how to forgive, but I have the desire to do it. I have the desire to forgive. I want to let this go. And I am doing my very best. And stay with it. And know that God is love, not judgment. Nobody and nothing is judging you except yourself. So I invite you to try something out this week. When you're tempted to judge or criticize somebody, don't allow yourself to continue down that track. Notice when you're starting to do that. I'm feeling a little critical, and you can tell because usually, I don't know, I feel it in my body. You may have other signs that you recognize when you're starting to feel critical or judgmental. Don't allow your thoughts to dwell on what you think they did. Instead, ask yourself, would I condemn myself for doing this, or would I want to be forgiven? Would I hold myself guilty, or would I want to feel forgiveness? And then, what do I see beyond their words and behavior? What is behind the thing that I'm stuck on for the moment, what's in their essence? What is in their hearts? What do I know is true about them? And look for that. Look for the goodness and see what happens. Just see what happens. You don't have to do anything in front of them. This can all be done by yourself. Sometimes when we're in the presence of someone who's making us mad, it's a little harder to do it because it's kind of feeding that juicy anger. So it's okay to step away. Also, if you're in any situation at all where you are being harmed, get out of that situation first. You do not need to stay in any situation. Honor your own wholeness and beingness by getting yourself to a place where you can nurture yourself. And then you begin to work on any forgiveness you still hold. So it's so easy to recap this because here's the essence of what I hope you have heard through this. One is the only blocks to the awareness of God's presence, to the flow of spirit in my life, my heart, my mind, is an unforgiveness. And forgiveness releases the power of God in me. And that's what we're here for. That's what unity stands for. That's why I come do what I do, and that's my daily practice. So let's practice. Let's do a quick meditation. Take some time to turn within and actually see how this might feel for you. So I invite you to gently close your eyes. Take a nice cleansing deep breath in. And then on the slowly exhale and feel your physical body relax just a little more. Shoulders drop down. Arms rest comfortably on your lap. Feel the muscles in your face gently relax. Take another nice deep breath in, and as you feel the air coming in and filling your body with that life-giving oxygen, feel your mind open up. And on that exhale, feel any thoughts that are bothering you simply float away. And one more deep breath in, slow inhale into the heart space. And as that oxygen flows in, feel your heart relax and open. Then settle right here with your breath at its natural pace. And feel a sense of safety within yourself, a safe place where we can explore, you can explore, I can explore any story I've been holding on to about what someone has done to me. Gently let that story come forward. You don't have to think about the whole story. You know which one it is. You know the person that it is. Perhaps this is even a story about you. Bring that in and just hold it lightly. And ask yourself, am I ready to let this go? Am I ready to let this go? Allow that person, that story, maybe even yourself, sit in this open-hearted space for a moment and just be. Who or what would this person be without that story? Who would you be without this story? And gently look past and deeper into that person in front of you. And choose to see the goodness there, if even for this moment. There is goodness in every single person. Stay with this for a moment. Look for that sense of openness and lightness. Remembering God is always present. And that divine power is your strength, your willingness, and your ability to see beyond the story. And I offer you these words to speak to yourself in this scenario if it feels right for you. Say to that person or even to that image of yourself, I release you to God and I bless you on your way. I release you to God and I bless you on your way. I forgive you as I am forgiven. I forgive you as I am forgiven. When we meet again, it will be in the spirit of love. When we meet again, it will be in the spirit of love. Good job. Tell yourself that. Good job, self. Then begin to come back, releasing the story, releasing the imagery. Bring your focus back up behind your eyes, gently wiggling toes and fingers, moving your arms to get yourself centered back into your body. And when you are ready, Gently open your eyes. Forgiveness releases the power of God in you and me. Namaste.
I want to say these names out loud again. I want to invite you in our fellowship to say hello to our board members who are here today, and maybe even thank them for their service. Our board president, Martin, give a wave. We also have Gil. Where is Gil? Is standing up right there. Yeah. And our three new folks. Lawrence. Beth is in the back. Kathy is where? Kathy's right there. Say hello. Hello. If they're up for it, give them a hug in fellowship. So now we move into that offering part of our service. Because we know that as we give, so do we receive. And it is through your generous gifts to Unity of Charlotte that we continue to be a light in this community. So please join me in our offering blessings together. Joyously I give this gift, knowing the divine presence blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. We are light, love, power, and presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Great.